Welcome to the Freak Show, fellow freaks.
I'm Matthew Brockmeyer.
And I'm Krista Carmen.
And this is
Murder Coaster.
Happy Valentine's Day, ladies and gentlemen. And to celebrate, we bring you one of the most disturbing and bizarre love stories in the history of true crime. A case exceptional because of both the sheer inhumanity and the very, very young ages of everyone involved in this horrendous, horrible love triangle. It's a tale Shakesperean in many ways. Young, star-crossed lovers of Romeo and Juliet, followed by the blinding jealousy of Othello, and the bloodthirstiness of Tamora in Titus Andronicus. Yet, it's a tale callously 1990s as well, indicative of the culture and times, the materialism of Madonna, and the nihilism of Marilyn Manson, that 90s grunge culture of MTV. And in the end, it's a story so horrendous and gut-wrenching, it's hard to believe it's true. But true it is. All too true. It is the story of Melinda Loveless and the horrible murder of Shanda. And today's story is a request from listener Kelly. This one's for you, Kelly. Happy Valentine's Day. We hope you enjoy it.
Yes, thanks so much, Kelly. And now, let's begin. Prologue. Bad, bad girls. They were at a hardcore punk show, and Melinda Loveless was telling her friend Lori Tackett that she wasn't kidding when she said she wanted to do more than just beat up Shanda Sharer. She wanted to kill her.
They were seeing the band Sunspring at the Audubon Skate Park in Louisville, Kentucky, directly across the Ohio River in Indiana where they lived. The park was a graffitied-up warehouse full of wooden skate ramps, cigarette smoke, sweaty punk rockers, and patchouli oil.
There were 4 of them there that night, Melinda Loveless and her new friend Lori Tackett, as well as Lori's friends Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence, neither of whom knew Melinda, having just met her that night.
Louisville, Kentucky has a long and rich culture of punk rock and hardcore, but the truth is, these girls weren't punks at all. They didn't care for the music. They had no interest in slam dancing, stage diving, of experiencing that pounding beat of raw energy. In fact, Hope and Tony never went into the show at all. They just stayed in the car to make out with some random boys they met in the parking lot.
Melinda Loveless was more into bands like New Kids on the Block and George Michael, and was girly, not gritty, dark and grungy, though she was attracted to folks like that, intrigued by it all.
Melinda fashioned her look after Madonna. Big hair and lots of makeup, lace and black rubber bracelets, a very feminine look. The polar opposite of the love of her life, Amanda Heavrin, who dressed so masculine, she was often mistaken for a boy. Amanda had broken Melinda's heart, shattered it by hooking up with another pretty girl with big hair, Shanda Sharer. And tonight, Melinda Loveless would have her revenge.
Lori, who whispered with Melinda, sucking on a cigarette, had more of a punk look. Bleached hair, cropped off and spiky, dressed entirely in black, but even she wasn't really a punk, more a goth. She listened to The Cure and the Violent Femmes, Much slower and softer music than the hardcore thrash blaring from the stage that night in Louisville.
Yeah, Laurie was tough, but she was more likely to be seeing the Rocky Horror Picture Show than moshing in the pit at a punk concert.
They were basically posers from across the river.
Though they weren't punks, they were bad girls. Mean girls. Angry, angry girls.
Laurie, who at 17 was the oldest of the bunch, was into black magic. Said she was possessed by the spirit of Diana the vampire. She'd cut people just to watch them bleed. Loved the taste of blood. Her ultimate fantasy was to burn someone alive.
Melinda, who just turned 16, had been exorcised for demons at 12 years old, and it shocked a lot of people when coming out as a lesbian at just 15, though both her older sisters had done so as well.
It was a cold night, and as Hope and Tony sat out in the parking lot, making out with random boys, Melinda and Laurie sat at the edge of the punk show, watching the band tear it up as kids went wild in the skate park, leaping off the stage, thrashing about, all as Melinda and Laurie whispered to themselves, plotting the murder of Shanda Scherer. Fuck her, she's got it coming. I warned her, said stay away from Amanda or I'll kill you. But she didn't listen. And she's a copycat. Everyone knows I'm the one with the Madonna style, not her.
Laurie, who'd never even met Shanda before, said, I want to see her bleed. Want to see her blood so bad. Want to taste it. I want to set her on fucking fire.
Fuck yes. She's been warned.
They'd already tried to abduct Shanda once that night, driving to her father's suburban home in Jeffersonville. But Shanda had told them to come back later, at midnight, and she'd sneak out with them.
It was getting late, so that's what Laurie and Melinda did. Gathering up Hope and Tony, piling into Laurie's 1984 Chevrolet Celebrity, and heading north on Interstate 64, over the Big Four Bridge, all lit up with colorful lights that glimmered in the dark waters below, and back into Indiana, Melinda talking the whole time. God, I can't wait to kill her. She's a cute thing. Maybe I'll fuck her with my knife, play with her.
Eventually, they reached the suburban home of Shanda Scherer. And Melinda hid in the back seat, a blanket covering her, a knife clutched in her fist. Hope and Laurie went to the front door.
As luck would have it, Shanda was standing right there, a friend having just left.
Hope told Shanda that they were friends with her girlfriend Amanda, Melinda's ex, and they claimed Amanda was waiting for them at the Witch's Castle, a burned-out stone structure in Utica that kids partied in.
It was a freezing cold night, and at first Shanda balked, saying she wasn't dressed for the outdoors. And besides, where was Amanda? She hadn't called or anything. Shanda didn't even know these two girls at all. Why wasn't Amanda with them?
Hope assured her Amanda was at the Witch's Castle waiting, and then offered to help Shanda pick out some warm clothes to wear, which the two did together, before going out into the icy night and getting into Laurie's car. Shanda getting in the front seat between Hope and Laurie, and the girls headed out.
There was a boombox in the back seat playing The Cure. Robert Smith crooning to show me, show me, show me how you do that trick. The one that makes me scream.
As they drove along, Shanda playfully asked, "What's Amanda wearing? Does she look cute?" And it was then that Melinda threw the blanket aside and leapt up from the back seat, grabbing Shanda's hair, pulling it back and putting the knife to her throat.
Surprise! Guess you weren't expecting to see me.
"Please, don't hurt me."
Shut up, bitch. I just want to talk about Amanda. I want you to tell me the truth about Amanda. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to talk. Are you and Amanda writing to each other?
Yes.
Did you go to the haunted house with Amanda?
Yes.
Did you and Amanda have sex?
Yes.
Liar.
Please don't hurt me, Melinda. I won't talk to Amanda anymore.
Amanda knows I'm going to kill you. Amanda says she wants you dead just as much as I do.
Please, Melinda, please, I'm sorry. And then the Chevrolet was pulling to a stop, the headlights going dark, the land eclipsed in blackness. They were there. The witch's castle.
The witch's castle, also known as Mistletoe Falls, was the burnt-out remains of an abandoned stone home, sitting up on a hillside looking down on the Ohio River. It does indeed give the appearance of a witch's castle, the blackened rocks and stone chimney, pillars that look like a castle turret, twisting stone walls.
Yeah, it's actually really cool looking. We will post some pics up on social media.
Local legend claimed that the house was once inhabited by 9 witches who controlled the town of Utica, and the townsfolk had burned it down trying to destroy them.
Laurie loved the place, said she could feel the presence of the witches, and that it was the perfect spot for a human sacrifice.
They exited the car, their breath coming in clouds of white, the stars glimmering, so cold you could almost hear the ice forming. Melinda grabbed Shanda by one arm, Laurie grabbing her by the other, and they marched her through the cold moonlight and into a stone-pillared area they called the dungeon.
Shanda didn't fight them. She went along without a struggle, perhaps hoping it was all part of some dark game, a prank. Hope and Tony lit lighters to illuminate the darkness, the flickering flames casting devilish shadows dancing on the stone walls as Laurie retrieved some rope she'd brought along, and she and Melinda set to binding Shanda's wrists and ankles, Melinda mocking her the whole time.
I see you're going for the Madonna look, Shanda, styling your hair like that. Are you trying to copy me? Do you want to be me? Is that why you're trying to steal Amanda from me?
They stripped her rings from her fingers, then tore off her Mickey Mouse watch, giving it to Hope, who danced about, saying, "Doesn't she have pretty hair?"
Yes, Melinda said. She does have pretty hair. I wonder how pretty she'd be if I cut it all off.
Laurie, her face an angry snarl, pointed into the darkness, saying, "There's bones back there, you know. Human bones hidden away. It could be you next."
And so began a night of torture, sexual assault, inhumane brutality, and unimaginable savagery that would last 8.5 hours.
Yes, for 8.5 hours, these young girls tortured and sodomized Shanda before burning her alive, leaving her naked and disfigured corpse in a cornfield for quail hunters to find. A crime that shocked the world and left the world wondering what kind of children could do this to each other.
Chapter 1. The Loveless Family. Melinda Loveless was born in New Albany, Indiana, on October 28, 1975, the youngest of 3 daughters, to Marjorie and Larry Loveless.
Oh, Melinda's father, Larry fucking Loveless. Man, this guy. We have covered some disgusting weirdos and perverts before, but this guy really takes the cake. Where to even start?
Apparently, Larry's mother had a, quote, cleaning disease, where if anything was dirty or out of place, she'd become hysterical. She'd make Larry wear white, ironed shirts as a child, and if they got wrinkled or dirty, she'd beat him with a belt and lock him in the closet. Even as a teenager, this was going on.
Larry was 20 years old when he met Melinda's mother, Marjorie, who was only 16 and a junior in high school, which tells you something right there. She'd never been on a date in a car, and Larry wooed her with his brand new 1966 Oldsmobile.
They very quickly wed and moved into an apartment together, all while Marjorie still attended high school. But Larry started showing up at the school, tracking her down in the hallway and loudly accusing her of flirting with other boys. It got so bad that she just quit school.
Then, in 1967, Larry was drafted and sent off to fight in Vietnam. While Larry was in country, Marjorie had a baby girl named Michelle.
Larry came back a war hero, the local newspaper writing about him, but he also had severe PTSD. He'd been weird before, but now he was acting even stranger, bragging that he'd tortured and killed men, women, and children, and had seen it all, carrying a gun on him at all times.
He insisted that all of his teeth be pulled out, even though they were fine. The dentist was against it, but Larry insisted, saying he wanted a perfect smile and would be happier with dentures, especially since the army was footing the bill.
He became obsessed with wanting to have sex in front of the baby, which Michelle would not do, causing fights.
So fucking weird. Michelle would come home and find Larry laying in bed wearing her underwear. And this guy was obsessed with women's underwear. As Michelle would say,
I knew he was a pervert because I'd be missing my underwear.
When a neighbor talked to Michelle in a way that Larry thought was provocative, he chased the guy down and beat him with a broom handle.
He started obsessively collecting guns, expensive ones, spending their food money on them, sleeping with a pistol under his pillow. And he was incredibly cruel to the baby, beating her for crying. Michelle says her first memories are being in the crib and being hit.
And when he bathed Michelle or changed her diaper, Marjorie says he would fondle her in a very inappropriate way that she was not comfortable with.
But Marjorie was only 17 years old, a child herself in many ways, and felt helpless, and says she did love Larry at that time. She was just very confused, gaslighted and dominated by this violent Vietnam vet.
He'd frivolously spend all their money on guns and toys and motorcycles, then tell Marjorie to ask his parents for money for groceries.
When Marjorie was pregnant with their second child, Melissa, they named their kids Michelle, Melissa, and Melinda, a woman came to Marjorie telling her she'd been sleeping with Larry. When she confronted him, he slammed her against the wall. He also attempted to molest Marjorie's 13-year-old sister during this time as well.
When Marjorie came home from the hospital with newborn Melissa, Larry told her she was a fat, ugly whore. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
God damn.
Laid under the willow tree.
At that point, Marjorie wanted out, but she didn't even have a high school diploma and had 2 children to care for. Where was she going to go?
Larry would wave his guns around, point them at her, and tell her if she ever left him, he'd kill her and her whole family.
Larry would beat her, then make her dress extremely provocatively and take her to the single bars, finding men or sometimes couples to bring back to the house so Larry could watch other men have sex with her.
Marjorie says it was utterly humiliating, sometimes even painful, but she was so young and didn't know any better, and It was the early 70s. It seemed like everyone was doing it. So she just went along with it all.
Larry's parents gave them money to put a down payment on a house, and on the surface, they appeared a perfectly normal American family.
But they were far from normal. Larry was working at the railroad, and he'd come home drunk with a fellow employee and insist Marjorie sleep with him while he watched. In particular, an obese and filthy man named Pete, who would fuck Larry as well. One night, Michelle walked in on all three of them having sex. As she'd later say,
I peeked around the corner into the living room at the couch, and I just remember seeing my dad and Pete and my mom. After that, I learned to stay in my room.
After that, Larry started leaving the kids at his parents' house during the weekends to have even larger orgies. And things just grew weirder and weirder. He'd masturbate into the underwear drawer, wear Marjorie's lingerie and makeup, insist on using vegetables as sex toys.
Larry experimented more with homosexuality and would make Marjorie watch as he used a dildo on himself, often engaging in sex acts with other men in their threesomes.
And I just want to chime in that it's not the sex acts themselves. Consenting adults should be free to do what they want. It's that Marjorie was forced into them through violence and abuse.
Larry got fired from the railroad for being constantly late and hungover, and was then hired by the, wait for it, the New Albany Police Department. Yes, now Larry is a cop, and he was quick to use both his handcuffs and nightstick in the bedroom.
Was missing in this puzzle I used to call my life. Oh no, didn't even care enough to be dismissive.
But life in the police force didn't last long.
When a black guy smiled and waved at Marjorie, Larry and his partner, who were actually off-duty and out of uniform but still carrying their guns, nightsticks, and badges, beat the shit out of the guy, busting his head open and sending him to the hospital.
A hearing was arranged, but Larry resigned before it began.
But by now, Marjorie had gotten her high school equivalency and was in nursing school, graduating in 1974 and starting at Floyd Memorial Hospital. Though Larry was at first antagonistic about Marjorie working, she soon became the breadwinner of the family.
Then Marjorie got pregnant again, despite being on birth control. She was deeply upset. She was almost at the point of being able to leave Larry, and she thought about getting an abortion. But after consulting her priest, she decided to keep the baby.
Yes, these people are religious. Just wait. It is insane.
And so, Melinda Loveless, the main character of our Valentine's Day episode, was born on October 28th, 1975.
Michelle, who was only 8 when Melinda was born, took care of her 2 younger sisters, especially baby Melinda.
When Melinda began to speak, she called Michelle Mom. Larry would tell Michelle that Melinda was her kid, even saying, "She looks just like you," gaslighting her into believing Melinda was her literal child.
So weird. But to Marjorie, Larry would claim Melinda wasn't his, and that she was a slut and some random guy from an orgy was the father. It got so bad that Marjorie even went and got a blood test, proving Larry was the father of Melinda, but he'd still get drunk and say he wasn't.
All the while, Marjorie is working double shifts at the hospital to put food on the table and pay the mortgage, basically coming home only to sleep. And Weird Larry is Mr. Mom to these 3 girls, running the house, but basically a just utterly bizarre drunk.
Larry would kill their pets and laugh about it. None of the girls felt safe. They'd wake up in the middle of the night and Larry would be standing over them, staring. They got so scared they'd all sleep together for protection, bundling up in a single bed.
Larry, for some reason, formed a bond with Melissa, the middle child, and would take her out to shoot guns, and this is fucked up, he'd get her drunk.
Yeah, she's like 7 or 8 years old, and he's just taking her out to the gun range all the time and getting her wasted.
He began referring to Michelle, the older daughter, the mother figure who was taking care of them all, as a bitch and a whore. He'd also lock her in her closet for hours at a time, knowing she was scared of the dark. He'd go to her bedroom window at night and tap on it to startle her. Once, he fired his gun at her, just missing her head, saying sorry, he thought he was back in Vietnam.
There were whispers that Larry was molesting the neighborhood kids, his own as well, and the family then moved into a larger and much nicer house, a different neighborhood, buying new furniture, all in gold tone, with big mirrors with gold veins running through them. Classy.
But they couldn't really afford the house and ended up filing for bankruptcy. Then Margie, who'd been growing suicidal over the weird orgies Larry was still forcing her to perform in, got encephalitis, a crazy viral infection, had to be hospitalized, and then was on powerful medication that made her bedridden.
And that is when Larry saw the light. Hallelujah! Praise the Lord!
Chapter 2. Larry, Son of God.
Larry decided there would be no more sex parties, no more alcohol, a life of purity and wholesomeness. Praise the Lord, amen.
Larry and Margie went to the Graceland Baptist Church in New Albany, Indiana, and made a full confession of all their sins to the deacons, speaking in tongues to prove their devotion and thrashing about.
All of which very much impressed the ministers.
Because their house was being foreclosed on by the bank, the good people at Graceland Church let the Loveless family live in a little house on the property.
And for Melinda Loveless, who was now 5 years old, these would be her first memories, moving into that house by the church.
Through the arbor, in the garden room, wings are beating, baby, me and you alone.
Larry became a fixture at church services, testifying to the power of Christ, proving himself a man of God, saying, quote,
We have been delivered from the hands of the devil.
and joined the staff as a lay preacher.
He'd hold healing ceremonies where he'd try to get folks in wheelchairs to walk. Apparently it never worked. At one time, he took his own eyeglasses and smashed them, saying his vision had been cured by the power of Christ.
But he later had to buy another pair because he couldn't see while driving.
The kids went to the church's school, and Marjorie became the school nurse.
And Larry stepped it up a notch, became obsessed with demons, and said he had the power to raise the dead. He wouldn't talk to anyone who hadn't been reborn, including his own parents. He incinerated all the girls' records and tapes, saying they were impure. Even their beloved stuffed animals and a doll Melinda adored, because they had strange eyes.
He made Marjorie throw away all her makeup and wear a veil to show her submission.
He began holding exorcisms on the girls, saying demons were inside of them. He once sent Melinda to a hotel room alone for a 5-hour exorcism with a 50-year-old preacher. She says she doesn't even remember what happened and thinks she slept through it.
She was only 5 years old.
That's a little terrifying. Like, what really happened? The school taught the children that the devil was coming to rule the earth for 1,000 years, and if you had the mark of the beast, 666, on you, you were doomed. Only the pure could escape. And the teachers at the school beat the children, then told them they were full of demons.
Yeah, that's some school there, man. 80s Indiana Baptists. For Michelle, though, the oldest, who'd been the substitute mother since she was 8, it was too much. Especially as she couldn't even go trick-or-treating anymore, as Larry said Halloween was the devil's night. Michelle began to rebel, which the church did not like at all.
One night, Michelle was forced to endure a violent exorcism when she wouldn't eat all her peas.
But of course, even though Larry had accepted Jesus in his heart as his personal savior and been reborn, women started coming forward, saying Larry was acting inappropriately to them, fondling them, awkwardly trying to force himself on them, basically just being inappropriate as hell.
He called them whores who needed to be healed.
And Larry was sneaking drinks again, too. First a beer or two here or there, but eventually keeping a 6-pack around and hitting the whiskey bottle as well.
Then a woman came forward saying Larry had tried to rape her, ripping her clothes and trying to overpower her, and eventually the Loveless family were excommunicated from Graceland Baptist Church, and they moved away.
That didn't last long, did it?
No, it didn't. They lived in Margie's sister's basement for a while. That had to be weird.
Michelle turned 16 and her grandparents bought her a car, so she was more independent now. But Larry still tried to dominate her, making her kiss him on the mouth and punishing her for any infraction by spanking her bare bottom.
Michelle also started to realize she was attracted to girls, not boys.
And soon Larry was back to all his old ways, no longer a man of God, just a disgusting old pervert. He'd walk into the room with the girls' underwear, begin to sniff them, and say, "These stink. Why are your underwear so stinky?" Then he'd put them on and parade about in his daughter's panties.
Ugh, gross. He'd spy on the girls while they showered, sometimes dousing them with cold water. They'd find him passed out drunk in their beds with their underwear all around him.
He'd force his daughters to pee into Dixie cups so he could examine their urine.
And he began forcing Marjorie to go to orgies again.
Once he rented a hotel room and ran a train on her of 20 guys while he watched. The ordeal took until 6 in the morning for them to finish. Afterwards, Marjorie tried to drown herself in the bathtub.
Later that year, he loudly raped Marjorie while the girls were sitting in the other room. They all say they heard it, but just pretended not to and played their board games as if everything was completely normal.
Again, happy Valentine's Day.
Chapter 3. Melinda.
Melinda was now 12 years old and had become the apple of her father's eye. Larry couldn't care less for the middle child Melissa anymore. Now it was all Melinda, Melinda, Melinda.
And Melinda was stunningly beautiful, attracting a lot of attention.
You know who she looks like? Jamie Gertz, who played Star in Lost Boys. She is just a dead ringer for her.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm totally seeing that. As one friend said,
if you ever watch movies and see like these love goddesses with like long hair and they're all dressed in white and their face structure is just perfect and their hair is just perfect, that's Melinda. Everything about her is beautiful. You can't find one thing on that girl that is not beautiful.
Michelle had to actually call the cops on a 19-year-old who was stalking Melinda and trying to date her. She was 12.
That is fucking creepy.
Then Michelle came out to her family as a lesbian.
Larry didn't really seem to care, though he bought her no Christmas gifts that year. But Marjorie was devastated. Which, get over it, Marjorie. What kind of role model have you been anyway?
Yeah, Jesus. And soon Melissa was coming out as gay as well.
When Melissa brought her girlfriend home, Larry called her a whore and tried to molest her.
Larry got a job as a postman and stole huge totes of mail. Then he started working as a long-haul trucker and was away for long periods of time.
And Melinda Loveless, the youngest of the family and main character of our story, began to explore her sexuality. She and her best friend Crystal would go to the mall and meet boys, find dark corners to make out with them. Sometimes Crystal and Melinda would make out with a boy together at the same time. They'd also photograph each other provocatively in lingerie.
In 1989, Melinda started Hazelwood Junior High. She was popular, but had a hard time with schoolwork and got bad grades. She loved New Kids on the Block and Madonna, would hang out at the arcade in the mall, would go to the movies to see Tom Cruise and Cocktail. She was very much an 80s girl, big hair and all.
Chapter 4. The End of the Loveless Family.
In November 1990, Melinda asked Larry to take her and her cousin swimming at the Holiday Inn, which he did.
The girls went into the locker room and changed into their bathing suits, and Larry got completely wasted, stumbling around fully dressed in the indoor pool. He threatened to get naked a few times, unbuttoning his pants. Then he started poking the girls with a cane.
Melinda knew her dad was hammered and it was probably time to go, so she and her cousin went into the locker room. And as they were showering, Larry snuck in and stole their clothes and towels, leaving them naked, then peeking in and shouting at them that if they wanted their clothes, they'd have to come and get them, which Melinda finally did, darting out, Larry laughing and waving his cane at his naked daughter.
Melinda, she was used to it all, but her cousin was horrified and in tears, utterly traumatized.
When they arrived home, Marjorie was chopping vegetables, and when her weeping niece burst in the door and told her what happened, Marjorie snapped and chased Larry out of the house with a knife.
Larry is screaming, "Help! Help! She's gonna kill me!" And Marjorie is chasing him across the lawn. The neighbors are coming out to watch. Then Larry turns and tries to grab the knife and gashes open his thumb. There's blood everywhere. The girls are crying. And Marjorie goes inside and swallows an entire bottle of tranquilizers.
Marjorie was found passed out and rushed to the hospital. Her stomach was pumped, and Larry fled and moved to his parents' house in Florida.
They were finally done with each other. Marjorie filed for divorce and got a restraining order, and Larry never returned to Indiana again and quickly remarried a woman in Florida.
But Melinda was devastated. She'd become Daddy's little girl. She was the baby and cherished her father. She was too young to realize how disgusting and evil he was, and that he'd groomed her to feel this way.
And Melinda blamed her mother for it all, cursed her and told her it was all her fault. Melinda just felt lonely and abandoned.
So Melinda sought to cure her depression and loneliness with boys, hooking up with random guys she met at the mall.
She lost her virginity, and the guy slapped her afterwards, treated her like scum. She began to experiment with girls and found she liked the experience much better. And that is when she met the love of her life, Amanda Heavrin.
Chapter 5. Amanda.
I'm not proud of where I've ended up. I'm ashamed of certain things I've done. But out of all the scratches, there's a cut that bleeds the worst. Every time I count my blessings, I count you first. Every time I count my blessings, I count you first.
It was Melinda's cousin Lisa who introduced Melinda to Amanda. As Lisa says,
Everybody thought Amanda was a boy. She dresses like a boy, she wears boys' shoes, boys' haircut, short. She wears guys' clothes, hangs out with the guys. She's just rough. She gets into fights with boys. She just does everything boyish.
Amanda had seen Melinda around and was captivated, saying she was so pretty, loved how she dressed like Madonna, and Amanda just really wanted to meet her, asking Laurie to introduce them.
And Melinda thought, and this is weird, Melinda thought Amanda looked like her dad, which she found attractive. And since Amanda was into karate, just like Larry had been, Melinda thought it was a sign they should hook up.
Melinda says Amanda was a terrible kisser at first, but she slowly taught her to kiss better. And when Melinda brought Amanda to her house, Margie was delighted at first, saying, "Who's your little boyfriend?"
God, Mom, she's a girl.
Melinda and Amanda became inseparable. They made love in a graveyard, in the snow, on chairs, everywhere. Young love. Amanda had a beautiful voice and would sing to Melinda, as Melinda would later say.
Sexually wise, she would sing and she was romantic, soft, tender, sweet. And then she can be very, very aggressive and rough when I want that.
The other kids at school would tease them. This is 1991 Indiana, so not the most tolerant of places. And both Amanda and Melinda would fight back.
Once Melinda even had to spray pepper spray at a group of boys Amanda was fighting.
You know, it all sounds pretty badass. These two young girls, outcasts, who found each other, made each other happy, and it was them against the world. True love, star-crossed lovers. This is the Romeo and Juliet stage of the relationship. Juliet, if you remember, was only 13 in that play. Amanda was 14 when she met Melinda.
And Melinda was only 15 at this point. But while advanced sexually, she was still a child in many ways. She still wet the bed and watched children's cartoons. She played with toys and basically functioned as a 9-year-old.
Interestingly, though, although Amanda was the male figure in the relationship, Melinda still dominated, saying,
I was in control sex-wise. I would give demands, orders. I controlled her. She was always wanting to have sex, and if she wouldn't, I would get mad, and I would forcibly make her. She would end up crying and saying, God, not like this.
Chapter 6, The New Girl. Shanda Scherer moved to New Albany, Indiana in the summer of 1991 with her mother, who was going through her third divorce.
Shanda was an all-American girl. She got great grades, was a cheerleader and a Girl Scout, had gone to a private Catholic school in Louisville, St. Paul, but she was looking to branch out, to be more adult.
She was tired of uniforms and wanted to go to a public school.
On August 1st, 1991, she wrote, and this is actual courtroom evidence, we are not making this up. Dear Diary, this year I'm going to a different school. I'm sort of scared I won't fit in because I heard that there are hoods, pretty girls, and all those guys.
Hoods? That is an expression my father used to use. Short for hoodlums. It's like some serious 1950s lingo there. Them hoods on 53rd Street are nothing to mess with.
Shanda continued in her diary. I wish my mom would understand that I don't want to be 12. I want to be 13. I wish I could tell people I was 13 and my mom would go along with that, but I know how my mom is. I love my mom very much, but she doesn't understand how much I want to be 13 and have people spend the night on school nights and talk on the phone past 10 o'clock. I wish I could go out with anybody. I wish I could live with my dad and have as much fun as possible. Shanda was physically mature for her age, wearing makeup and tight jeans, and many people did, in fact, think she was older than she was, and she attracted unwanted suitors at the new school.
One day, a guy named Nathan just wouldn't leave her alone, and she began arguing with him. And this Nathan happened to be Amanda's cousin. And when Amanda saw her cousin and Shanda arguing, she jumped in, demanding to know who this Shanda thought she was, yelling at her cousin. And they got into a full-on fist fight right there in the hallway.
They ended up having to serve in school suspension together. Stuck in the same room together, Amanda apologized to the new girl, Shanda, who was actually a really sweet person, and they ended up talking and exchanging numbers and started calling each other.
Amanda would write her notes, slip them into her locker. Notes saying, hey, I don't want you to think I'm a bad person. I don't like to fight. I hate to fight. It's just, when I had you on the ground getting ready to hit you, I couldn't because you look so helpless down there. But then you swung at me and started pulling my hair. So I started hitting you. I have a question to ask you. I know this is going to sound dumb, but do you kinda, in a way, like girls? If so, I think it's cool. Because it's so different. Is that why you're so nice to me? Do you think I'm cute? Please tell me the truth. Your friend, Amanda.
They became such good friends that Amanda even came over to Shanda's house. Her mother, like Melinda's, thinking Amanda was a boy at first.
And Melinda? Well, Melinda was pissed. Who the hell was this new girl? Did Amanda think she was pretty? Why was she spending all this time with her? So Melinda started writing letters to Shanda.
Shanda, I want to be your friend. I just don't like it when you speak to Amanda. Amanda and I are going together, and she loves me and I love her, and she only wants to be friends with you. You need to accept that. Amanda told me you are going through bad times. Well, if you need someone to talk with, you can always talk to me. I don't want you sneaking behind my back. You need to find you a boyfriend, because Amanda is mine. You, me, and Amanda need to have a talk together and get this squared away. Then we could all be friends.
But Amanda was still writing Shanda, saying, "Hey, what's up? Please don't let Melinda bother you. I was wondering, do you still like me? If so, I'm glad. I have a lot in store for Friday. Something you've been talking about. You know what I mean? Do you want it to happen, what I got in store? If so, answer back, yes."
What's really fucked up is that Shanda is only 12, which is so young, even younger than Juliet's 13, which Shanda longed to be and never would reach. Happy Valentine's Day.
Then Melinda is writing to Amanda.
Amanda, why did you write her fucking name on your folder? It hurt so much when I saw it. I didn't think you would put her ugly name on your folder, and you wrote it. You must have liked her enough to write her name. Why?
And now Amanda's writing Shanda. You think you love me, but deep down you probably don't. Don't get me wrong. I like you and everything, but I like Melinda too. You gotta understand, I knew her a lot longer. I don't know what to do. I have 2 beautiful girls who like me, and I don't know what to do. Shanda, I can't say I love you, because I just don't know.
Melinda would later say, I couldn't take it because Amanda was mine. I molded her. She was my little Mandy, everything I ever wanted. I was obsessed with her.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Chapter 7, The Punks.
While Amanda was spending more and more time with Shanda, spending nights at her house, the two becoming a couple, Melinda was hanging out with some new friends in Louisville, Kentucky, where she'd get drunk and wild.
In particular, Melinda was hanging out with Carrie Pope and the Leatherbury brothers.
It's so funny reading about this from the perspective of people who don't know or understand these subcultures. Carrie Pope is described as a hardcore punk who listened to The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, and Sinead O'Connor, and who wore all black and had her hair shaved short besides her bangs. Now, if I personally had to describe her, I'd say she was a casual goth with a Chelsea haircut. Like, come on, The Cure is so far from hardcore punk, and Sinead O'Connor, she was like MTV pop music. I mean, she's cool, she's a little edgy, she tore up that picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live, but she is nothing like a hardcore punk rocker.
And the haircut, shaved short besides the bangs, has a name and a long history. It's called the Chelsea and became popular for women working in factories in England during World War II so that their hair wouldn't get caught in machinery, making it the epitome of working class pride and skinhead culture, both feminine and tough as nails.
And it's still a very popular haircut for punk and skin girls today.
Melinda was also friends with brothers Terry and Larry Leatherbury. Now, these two sound like real punks.
They were gay and did some hustling. Gay hustling or working as a male prostitute has a long history in punk rock. Iggy Pop, the godfather of punk, had done it, as had Dee Dee Ramone, who even wrote the song 53rd and 3rd about it. Darby Crash and the Germs and all kinds of LA punks all hung out at the Okie Dog, which was a, quote, landmark of male prostitution. And the Leatherbury brothers, geez, even their name is punk rock, Leatherbury. They hung out in Chelsea Park, off East Highway, a place called, Okay, warning, slur coming. I'm just going to say it because they all said it. Fag Hill. As Carrie Pope said,
It's a gay people hangout. They pick up trade. There's people having sex in the bushes. You blink your headlights for action.
Melinda, Carrie, and the Leatherberry brothers would hang out with other punker kids at Bardstown Road in Louisville where they could buy punk stuff. And back then, you couldn't go to the mall and buy a pair of Doc Martens. You had to go find the cool underground punk rock store. Not that Melinda ever wore Docs. She was still cultivating that Madonna look.
Though she was making new friends, Melinda still harbored a deep jealousy and hatred of Shanda. The night of the Hazelwood dance, Melinda had her friend Carrie drive her to the school, where she spied Amanda and Shanda leaving the dance together. A couple holding hands.
Melinda stormed up, slapping Shanda across the face and chasing Amanda around the school, shouting,
"You're sick! You're a whore! You're sleeping with a baby!"
Melinda started dating other girls, messing around with Carrie for a while. And then Amanda was the one who would get jealous. And she started putting roses in Melinda's locker, writing to Shanda, "You know I care about you. It's just I have mixed emotions. In a way, I still love Melinda. I think I always will. I get jealous when she talks to other people. I know sex is fun, but how come you want to have it every time I'm over there? Love's not about sex." Well, it helps, but loving someone for who they are and not what they're capable of in bed.
And Shanda was seeing other people as well, hooking up with boys, being seen making out with them at the mall, which would drive Amanda wild, as Melinda would say. Shanda wasn't the type to be picky about who she slept with. Everyone wanted her because of the way she dressed, and she was easy. That's what boys want, something that's easy.
Melinda became so distraught that she went to the assistant principal of the school and told him that she was gay. She was worried her parents and her friends' parents didn't understand. So the assistant principal gave her a book on interracial dating. Yeah, interracial dating, okay. Just, here you go, little lady, this should help you out. Go on, go on. What the fuck, man?
Then Shanda's mother discovered that Shanda had been skipping school, getting detention and suspensions and forging her signature, and that Shanda was failing all her classes. Every one of them. She'd been nearly a straight-A student before they moved to Indiana.
Should have kept her in Catholic school.
Shanda's mother forbid her from seeing either Amanda or Melinda.
But when Shanda spent the weekend at her father's house, she invited Amanda along, and they went to the Harvest Homecoming and to the haunted house there together. So that didn't really work.
When Melinda heard about them going to the haunted house together, she lost it, telling multiple people, "I'd like to beat her up. I'd like to kill her."
And Amanda was now writing Shanda poems, saying, "My precious one, I love you so with each day. That love will grow until its height reaches the sky. And even then, it will not die."
And on October 28th, Melinda's 16th birthday, she was all alone. The year earlier, Amanda had bought her necklace. This year, she got nothing from her, and nothing from her father either, not even a card. The two loves of her life had completely abandoned her.
Do you love true crime and travel? Having traveled the world solo the last couple of years and being obsessed with true crime, I found myself researching others who took the same vacations but never made it home. The Last Trip is a true crime podcast covering missing and murdered people that were living their best lives on vacation. I'm your host, Jamie Beebe, and each week I'll bring you on The Last Trip, taking a deep dive into vacation culture and travel spots, tips on staying alive while traveling, and ultimately recreating someone's last days in paradise. What led to their last trip? What are the hard facts? What is the final outcome? And could you be next? David Snedden was a 24-year-old college student from Utah attending Mandarin classes in Beijing when he mysteriously disappeared while hiking Tiger Leaping Gorge. Chinese authorities said he drowned in the gorge and U.S. authorities agreed, although his body was never found and his parents didn't believe that. 7 years later, out of the blue, they got a phone call from a former U.S. official who had evidence David is still alive. This case sounds like a Hollywood movie, but evidence doesn't lie. So where is David Snedden? Famous rugby player and Celebrity X Factor contestant Levi Davis went missing in Barcelona last year while on a backpacking trip through Europe. Just days before he vanished, he posted a 15-minute video to his Instagram account saying his life was in danger and people were after him. After he disappeared, several theories emerged. But what really happened to Levi Davis? Join me, Jamie Beebe, co-host of the popular true crime series Strictly Stalking, as I embark on a brand new adventure combining true crime and travel. Listen to The Last Trip wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm hushing the dog on the chain. I'm lining up stones on the edge of the bank. Rally the troops for another refrain. I sing this softly to myself. I sing this softly to myself.
But Shanda's mother soon discovered some of these hot and heavy love letters Amanda and Shanda were writing each other. Some drenched in perfume, openly sexual, and completely at her wit's end, Shanda's mother pulled her out of the public school altogether, placing her in Our Lady of Perpetual Help and into a religious education program.
But Shanda and Amanda still managed to covertly see each other. The relationship now steeped in drama and family intrigue, just making it that much more passionate. Just like those doomed and forlorn lovers, Romeo and Juliet.
As the great bard would say, a pair of star-crossed lovers, whose misadventure piteous overthrows doth bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which, but their children's end, naught could remove, is now the 2 hours traffic of our podcast. The which if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, or toil shall strive to mend.
Chapter 8. Laurie.
While Amanda and Shanda sought to find love under the angry eye of Shanda's mother in Indiana, Melinda, meanwhile, was growing closer and closer with her so-called punker friends in Louisville, Kentucky, Carrie Pope and Terry and Larry Leatherberry, going to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show and hanging out at Skateboards Unlimited in Cherokee Park.
And it's through this crazy crew that Melinda met Laurie Tackett, the other driving force in the murder of Shanda Scherer.
Get ready for another insane family story here as we dive into the Tacketts.
Mary Laureen Tackett, who went by Laurie, was born in Madison, Indiana on October 5th, 1974. Her mother was a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian, and her father was a factory worker with 2 felony convictions from the 1960s.
Laurie says she was molested as a child, but blocked everything out, her entire childhood, saying,
I don't remember my childhood, just nightmares and dreams. All of my memories are violent.
She says her most vivid memory is an army of men dressed in black armor, attacking naked children.
Laurie's mother was a member of the Lighthouse on the Hill Church, which sounds like something out of a Stephen King book. Lighthouse on the Hill Church. Members were not allowed to wear makeup, jewelry, and especially jeans. They really hated jeans.
They'd speak in tongues, roll on the floor, have visions of bathing in the blood of the Lamb of God, and preached that if you don't receive the Holy Ghost, you're going into eternal fire. They also forbade modern medicine, saying prayer was the only cure, and only sinners used medicine.
Laurie had a jaw disorder, but her mother forbid her from having surgery, and Laurie would suffer massive headaches because of it.
Laurie's mom insisted she wear ankle-length dresses with long sleeves, no bright colors, only bland, muted pastels, and wear her hair long and straight. A complete Harry White figure. She's like literally Harry White. And like Carrie, she was teased and harassed in school. Just wearing bright colors was a sin and a sign of the devil. As Laurie said,
"Everything I did, I was told I was going to hell for it. That's all they preached, going to hell and burning."
When Laurie turned 13, she told her mother she wanted to wear normal clothes, bright colors, and listen to popular music. And that's when the fights began.
By the time Laurie was 14, she was self-medicating with alcohol and telling her mother she didn't believe in the Holy Ghost and refused to go to church. She'd smuggle normal clothes to school and change into them there, wearing the evil, devilish, and forbidden jeans.
Not jeans. Denim is the devil's cloth.
Yes, jeans. And one day, Laurie's mom caught her wearing jeans. It was a big deal. A very big deal.
In a rage over the blue jeans, Laurie's mom attacked her, knocking her to the ground. Laurie climbing under the kitchen table, her mother tossing it aside, screaming at her.
"Jeans are of the devil! You are an abomination and hellbound!"
Laurie scurried away, locking herself in her bedroom, but her mother tore the door down and began to strangle her daughter for wearing the dreaded jeans.
Laurie managed to break free, escape the house, and run to the neighbors.
Laurie had a large bruise blooming on her face, scratches all over her neck. Her clothes were torn. The sheriff was contacted, as well as Indiana State Department of Public Welfare.
A deal was settled where Laurie could continue to live at home, but an officer of the juvenile court assumed supervision over her, and there would be unannounced visits from a social worker.
Finally free of this cultish religion, Laurie cut her hair into a fashionable bob, got her ears pierced, and started wearing the dreaded jeans, as well as bright colors, which the social worker saw as a positive sign, and the state dropped the case. Yay! Now Laurie can just be a normal teenage 80s girl in her Jordache and Benetton.
But then Laurie's mom had another vision from God, and again began making strange demands of her daughter, condemning her, saying she was under the influence of Lucifer, that she was evil and going to burn in a pit of fire for eternity.
As Laurie would say at the time, "My mom made me want to be evil. I mean, I was never into Satan. I just wanted to be the opposite of her because I hated her. I resented her. I wanted to be the evilest person on earth."
By now, Laurie was 15 and went into full-on rebellion, taking everything a step further.
Now she hacked her hair super short and spiky, bleaching it blonde, trading in her Esprit and Benetton and blue jeans for a black wardrobe, started wearing black lipstick and eyeliner, and devoted her life to the occult, which in Indiana in 1990 meant playing Dungeons and Dragons.
She got into divining prophecy with Nordic runes, tarot cards, and contacting spirits through a Ouija board.
And this is interesting. She hung out with these kids who had a secret society they created. based on a combination of Clive Barker books and Star Wars, where they believed humans were bred from extraterrestrial beings and there was no God.
Laurie was good friends with Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence. Hope was a bright-eyed free spirit. Tony was a nerdy girl with thick glasses and into the new wave look.
Tony, sadly, was very troubled. She'd been abused as a child and sexually assaulted at just 14. The police disgustingly doing nothing about it, leading to a suicide attempt at just 14.
The girls were all about spiritualism, making contact with those who'd passed over the veil that separates the living and the dead, and would go into trances where they channeled ancient spirits. Laurie divining Deanna the vampire as her eyes rolled back in her head and her body went limp.
All the while, Laurie's mom actively worked to keep her away from her friends, saying,
"I won't have devil worshippers in my house. Satan is not welcome here."
Laurie's mother would drag her to the church, all dressed in black with her goth makeup on, where the congregation would lay hands on her, speaking in tongues, trying to exorcise the demons from her.
When her mother discovered Laurie was using a Ouija board at her friend Hope's house, she lost her mind.
She stormed over there, demanding Hope's father burn it. Burn that Ouija board right now.
Kind of stunned, Hope's dad just gives Laurie's mom the Ouija board and said, "Here, do whatever you want with it."
Then Laurie's mom started demanding Hope's house be exorcised of demons. As Hope's dad would later say, "Yeah, she wanted to have someone come from her church. She felt that because we had the Ouija board here, we were endangered." Well, she was very adamant about it.
And he let them do it. Let these crazy preachers come and exorcise his house as Hope and Laurie watched, giggling, thinking the whole thing was ridiculous.
Can you imagine your mom demanding your friends' parents have their house exorcised of demons? Awkward.
Yeah, tell me about it. Laurie began experimenting with her sexuality and discovered she was attracted to girls, hooking up with a goth girl named Diane, whom they called the Ice Princess. Diane introduced her to cutting and self-harm, saying pain relieved the stress of living.
Soon the whole little clan were cutting themselves with razors. And on Friday, March 22nd, Laurie and Diane were having a sleepover at Tony's house when Laurie, showing off, took a razor blade and said,
"Watch this."
She then cut open the top of her hand so badly they could see the bone slashing right through a tendon.
Laurie was rushed to the emergency room and had to undergo surgery. Afterwards, she was put in a psychiatric unit.
Her mother, apparently thinking she needed Jesus and not surgeons and psychiatrists, initially refused to visit her.
Brain scans and EEG and other neurological tests all appeared normal. Laurie was listed with the following problems: depression, family dysfunction, and time loss.
When Laurie eventually returned home, she was more rascally and wild than ever. She'd run away for weeks at a time. She refused to go to school.
She had an opportunity to go to New York City with her cousin, and her dad gave her $400 to add to her savings for the trip, hoping the Big Apple might make his rebellious daughter happy.
It didn't. As punk rock as New York City is, and it's punk as hell, it's also cold, big, unforgiving. The streets could be mean, cruel, downright savage. Laurie only lasted a week there.
Laurie returned to her parents' home and begged her father to buy her a car so she could get a job. And he did. A 1984 celebrity four-door, Under the agreement, Laurie would pay him $50 a week.
Now that she had a car, Laurie spent nearly all her time in Louisville, Kentucky, seeing the Rocky Horror Picture Show, hanging out at the record stores and the skate park, all that fun 90s stuff.
Laurie became obsessed with death and blood, even freaking out some of the actual punks like Terry Leatherbury, who said,
Well, she would suck people's blood, or her own. She would say, "Oh, I just love the taste of blood."
Fucking Kentucky vampires, man. The place is lousy with them.
And of course, there was another Indiana girl hanging out down there in Louisville. A 16-year-old girl who styled her look after Madonna and looked just like Jamie Gertz in Lost Boys. A girl named Melinda Loveless.
Chapter 9. The fearful passage of their death-marked love.
Laurie and Melinda didn't really get along that well.
Laurie thought Melinda was a poser, hated her Madonna look, which was the antithesis of Laurie's hacked-off hair and grungy flannel attire.
And Laurie didn't think Melinda was a real lesbian either. She just seemed fake.
But Melinda proved herself tough when she started telling Laurie she wanted to kill a girl named Shanda who'd stolen her love from her. That sounded good to Laurie, who fantasized about stabbing someone and setting them on fire. Real good. Let's do it, she said.
Laurie's friends, Hope Rippey and Tony Lawrence, hadn't even met Melinda before. That cold and tragic night of January 11th, 1992, when they all piled into Laurie's car and drove into Louisville for a punk show at the skate park.
And none of them, besides Melinda, knew who Shanda Scherer was, this 12-year-old girl they all agreed to abduct and murder.
Chapter 10. The Witch's Castle.
There in the witch's castle sat Shanda Scherer, wrists and ankles bound, as Melinda Loveless waved a knife in her face, threatening to cut off her hair.
Hope, who didn't know either Melinda or Shanda, took the knife as Melinda ripped the rings off Shanda's fingers, handing him out to the girls. Hope began dancing about the shadows and stone with Shanda's digital Mickey Mouse watch, which played a little tune when you pressed a button.
Laurie pulled out a t-shirt emblazoned with a smiley face, poured whiskey over it and set it aflame, saying, "This is what we're going to do to you."
Then, a series of cars passed by in the distance, their headlights cutting through the cold January night. And worried the flames and smoke of the t-shirt might have been seen, the girls pulled Shanda up, marched her back to the car, and headed out to a different spot Laurie knew of. Hope now driving the car.
They drove out through the forests and fields and down an old gravel logging road that turned into a path, motoring through brush and brambles until they reached a small clearing in the forest that was used as a garbage dump.
They violently pulled a weeping Shanda from the car, throwing her to the ground in the glare of the headlights.
At this point, Tony, the sad and nerdy little new wave girl in thick glasses, only 15, was having second thoughts. She herself had been the victim of assault and abuse, and this wasn't what she signed up for. And when she saw Shanda become hysterical, begging, she hugged her and told her she was sorry. Shanda saying to her,
Tell them not to hurt me.
Melinda, Tony said, maybe we should take her home. This is getting out of control.
Melinda just scowled at her, saying,
Shut up.
So Tony and Hope went back to the car, cranking up the stereo as loud as they could to drown out whatever horrible things were happening outside. And Melinda and Laurie ordered Shanda to take off all of her clothes, waving the knife at her threateningly, forcing her to strip down, take off her pants, her blouse, her bra as well. Melinda saying,
I'm going to keep these as souvenirs.
Shanda stood there shivering in the January night, naked besides a pair of blue panties.
Hit her, Laurie growled, circling around. Hit her, hit her, hit her, hit her.
Shanda pleaded with them. Melinda, please stop. Don't do this to me. I'll stay away from Amanda, I promise.
Shut the fuck up, Melinda said, slamming her fist into Shanda's stomach, knocking the air from her, then grabbing her by the hair and slamming her face into her knee, the braces in Shanda's teeth cutting open her mouth, blood pouring out.
Shanda tumbled to the wet, dirty ground, and as Laurie grabbed Shanda's arms, Melinda brought the knife to Shanda's throat, pulling it across.
But it was a dull paring knife and did nothing, so she used her foot to push the knife into her neck, and it still wouldn't break the skin.
And now Shanda is thrashing, breaking free of Laurie, pushing herself up, nearly free, and Hope leapt from the car and pushed Shanda back down again, spitting on her as Melinda and Laurie wrapped a rope around her neck and choked her into unconsciousness.
Laurie and Melinda then dragged Shanda over the icy ground to the car, where they threw her into the trunk.
They got back in the car. Hope began to drive away, weeping now, and asking, Is she dead?
Yeah, Melinda said.
Hope began to cry hysterically, oh God, and she floored the car, flying down the dirt road, hitting a log, tearing the muffler off, the engine shrieking.
They drove back through the night to Laurie's house and drank some Pepsi, were lounging around Laurie's bedroom when some dogs began barking outside, and then they heard it. Shanda screaming inside the trunk, beating against the confines. Help! Help me!
I'll take care of it, Laurie coldly stated, racing down to the car with a knife. The screams stopped, and Laurie returned, splattered with blood.
Laurie then told Melinda she wanted to tell her fortune. She muttered an incantation and then threw her Viking runes and began to decipher the hidden messages, smiling and looking up at Melinda as she said,
"Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay." And you know, if you wrote this as a fiction story, everyone would say it sounded too fake and was unbelievable. True crime, man, true crime.
It was now 2:30 in the morning, and Laurie suggested they go out country cruising, driving around the back roads.
But Hope and Tony, laying curled up in Laurie's bed, were both traumatized and exhausted from it all. They were done. They just wanted to lay there and go to sleep, hoping they could wake up to discover it was all a horrible, horrible dream.
So Melinda and Laurie let them sleep and piled into the old Chevrolet Celebrity, speeding off into the night, the missing muffler making the car roar loudly.
Then they heard it. First a thud, then another, then pounding and screaming as Shanda thrashed in the trunk, still alive, trying to claw her way into the back seat.
"I'll make her quiet," Laurie said, pulling over and telling Melinda to get behind the wheel and to rev the engine to drown out Shanda's screams.
Laurie opened the trunk and grabbed a crowbar from beside the spare tire, and as Shanda thrashed, desperately fighting to get out of the trunk, covered in blood, wearing nothing but blue panties, Laurie smashed her in the head over and over until Shanda finally went still.
Incredibly disturbingly, these teenage girls would use that crowbar to repeatedly sodomize Shanda throughout the night.
So fucked up, man. Then Laurie slammed the trunk lid and hopped back in the driver's seat, waving the bloody crowbar and exclaiming, "You should have felt it. It was so cool. I could feel her head caving in. Smell it. Smell the blood."
No, that's sick. I don't want to smell it.
This dialogue is actual recorded testimony. We are not making it up. Again, happy Valentine's Day.
They drove over the back roads of southern Indiana, the stars sparkling in a cold sky, listening to The Cure and Susie and the Banshees. Eventually, they stopped again to, as they said, assess the situation in the trunk.
When they opened the trunk, like a horror movie, Shanda sat straight up, her face a mask of blood and gore, her eyes rolling up into her head so that only the white shone, her mouth opening as she called out, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." Horrified, they slammed the lid back down and again went on driving through the tall trees and shadows of the Indiana night.
They stopped on a bridge where they planned on throwing her out, but headlights cut the darkness in the distance and they went onwards.
They drove along and a new sound came from the trunk. Gurgling, and gasping. And then they heard Shanda calling out, "Melinda?" He scratched a bit. Then silence.
As the first rays of dawn cracked open the night sky and amber filled the horizon, they pulled back up at Laurie's mom's house yet again.
When they entered the bedroom, Hope sat up from the bed asking, "Where's that little girl?"
"There is no little girl," Laurie said. "It was just a nightmare."
Both Melinda and Laurie were covered in blood, so they washed up, Hope following them into the bathroom, asking again where the little girl was, Laurie gleefully telling her how she bashed her head in with a crowbar.
Then Laurie's mom woke up, demanding to know what the hell they were doing and who was in her house.
If there is evil, there's demons and a devil, like Laurie's mom fully believed. They were in that house that early morning.
Laurie asked her mother if she had any matches. She didn't. Then Laurie told her mother they were leaving. She was driving her friends home. Later, Mom.
So the four girls loaded back up into the car yet again. Hope stopping to peek into the trunk at Shanda, who lay naked and motionless in a puddle of blood. Hope spraying her with a Windex and saying,
"You're not so hot now, are you?"
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
The crazy thing is these girls were complete strangers. Hope had never met this naked, hacked up and beaten girl she was spraying with Windex before, had no reason to hate her, to be this cruel. She was a complete stranger.
Fuck, man. Mean girls.
They went to a gas station, bought a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi, then drove out past Jefferson Proving Ground, down a gravel road to a desolate spot where farmers' fields met the forest, an abandoned farmhouse gloomily looking down at them.
While nerdy little Tony sat in the back seat trembling, wondering how the night had turned out like this, Melinda, Laurie, and Hope went to the trunk.
"Gross," Melinda said. "I'm not touching that."
Hope and Laurie wrapped Shanda up into a red blanket. Shanda reaching a trembling, blood-soaked hand, clutching the edge of the blanket as they pulled her free from the car and lay her on the frost-covered dirt, naked beside a pair of blue, blood-splattered panties. They spread her legs, pulled her underwear aside, sodomized her with the crowbar.
"Pour the gasoline on her, Hope," Laurie demanded.
No, you do it.
"Just do it."
Fine.
As the body went up in a ball of flame, the girls took off. But then Melinda ordered them to stop, leaped out, taking the 2-liter bottle, which still had some gas in it, ran back to Shanda's smoking remains and dumped the rest of the gasoline on her face, catching the bottle on fire as she did so.
Melinda darted back to the car, giggling, telling the other girls,
You should have seen it. Her tongue was going in and out of her mouth. It was so funny. I'm glad she's dead.
It was now 9:30 in the morning.
They went to the McDonald's and got breakfast sausages, Melinda laughing and saying the cooked flesh looked like Shanda, as Tony went to a payphone and told her friend Michael that Laurie Hope and some girl named Melinda had just killed a little girl.
They went to the mall where they met Amanda. And when Melinda told Amanda they'd killed Shanda, Amanda didn't believe her. So they took her out to the parking lot and showed her the trunk of the car, drenched in blood, with bloody handprints showing where Shanda had pounded and tried to claw her way out.
Shocked beyond belief, Amanda threw up and asked them to drive her home.
When they pulled up at Amanda's house, Melinda kissed her, told her she loved her, and pleaded with her not to tell anyone, to keep it all a secret. Amanda kissed her back, told her she loved her too, and that she would never tell a soul about what Melinda had done.
Amanda then went into her house and promptly told her father everything. Chapter 11. Aftermath.
burned remains of Shanda Sharer were quickly discovered by a pair of quail hunters, who at first assumed she was a mannequin. But as all true crime freaks know, it's never a mannequin.
At 8:30 that night, a hysterical Tony showed up at the sheriff's station in Madison with her father, saying she wanted to give a statement, that she'd seen a girl named Shanda from New Albany be murdered.
And in New Albany, Amanda's father went to the police, making a statement about what Melinda had told his daughter. The whole shit show is coming down hard.
At 2:30 in the morning, police surrounded Melinda's home, barging in with a murder warrant, storming into her bedroom with the posters of In Excess on the wall. Marjorie demanded to see their badges, wanted to know what was going on. An officer telling her,
"Ma'am, all I can say is, I have a daughter the same age, and she has a room just like Melinda's. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you, but get a good lawyer."
Oh, die without sound. Hey, baby's round. Your chest, it's soaked in blood. From your veins.
During her interview, Melinda flirted with police officers, batting her eyes and smiling seductively, trying to manipulate them. She even kept leaning forward over her chair, exposing her cleavage to them and grinning.
Police searched Shanda's room, and hidden in the back of her closet was a shoebox tied together with string, saying, "Private, please don't look."
Inside was every note from Amanda and Melinda, leaving a clear story. A story of love, jealousy, despair, hatred, and murder.
It was all laid out, clear as day, literally tied with a bow.
All 4 of the girls were charged as adults, and to avoid the death penalty, they all pleaded guilty and made deals, stating their traumatic childhoods as mitigating factors in the crime.
Melinda and Laurie both received 60-year sentences. Hope, too, received 60 years, but had 10 years suspended for mitigating circumstances. Which, I don't know. Hope is the one who dumped the gasoline on her and enticed Shanda out into the night.
Nerdy little new wave girl Tony, who begged them to let Shanda go and wasn't involved in the physical assaults or burning, and had quickly confessed, received only 20 years, a third of what the other girls got.
Because of all the abuse and violence Crazy Larry Loveless had inflicted on his family came to light during the sentencing hearing, he was arrested in February of 1993 on charges of rape, sodomy, and sexual battery.
He rotted in jail for 2 years awaiting trial, but because most of the crimes occurred from 1968 to 1977, nearly all the charges were dropped because of the statute of limitations.
In the end, Crazy Larry only received 1 count of sexual battery and was released with time served in 1995.
Shanda's father was so guilt-ridden over his daughter's death, he literally drank himself to death, dying of alcohol-related disease at just 53 years old. But Shanda's mother, in an amazing act of goodwill, agreed to make contact with Melinda.
Melinda had been an ideal prisoner. She received her high school equivalency and several college degrees in prison, and became involved in a prison dog training program where prisoners train dogs to help people with disabilities.
Melinda was amazingly good at it, had a gift for working with dogs and training them. It's really a fantastic program. It gives prisoners a sense of purpose and hope and helps disabled folks by giving them a service animal. And these dogs are trained to do all kinds of amazing things.
The director of the program, a burn survivor named Charlie Petrizzo, contacted Shanda's mother, asking her to forgive Melinda and donate a dog to her in Shanda's honor, a dog named Angel, which she did, and continued to do so every year, saying she forgave her. And it was very emotional. All this is actually making me want to fucking cry. It was a beautiful thing.
Oh man, I don't know. Better person than I am, I guess. I don't know how you could forgive that. Shanda's mom, Jacques Voigt, says she received a lot of criticism for forgiving her daughter's killer. But she said, "It's my choice to make. If you don't let good things come from bad things, nothing gets better. And I know what my child would want. My child would want this."
Nerdy New Wave Tony was released on December 14th, 2000, after serving just 9 years of her 20-year sentence.
Hope was released from Indiana Women's Prison on April 28th, 2006, after serving 14 years of her 50-year sentence.
Laurie was released from Rockville Correctional Facility on January 11th, 2018, the 26th anniversary of Shanda's death, after serving nearly 26 years of her 60-year sentence.
And Melinda Loveless was released from Indiana Women's Prison on September 5th, 2019, after serving 26 years of her 60-year sentence.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Melinda Loveless and the horrible murder of Shanda Sharon.
Happy Valentine's Day, folks.
And thanks again to Kelly for requesting this Valentine's story. Do you have a case you think we should cover? Did we get something wrong? Do you just want to say hi? You got some music you want us to play? Reach out to us at murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. That's murdercoasterpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. We will catch you later with more tales of murder, madness, and mayhem.